Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wine, Women, and Words. I don't know why I do this every time. But hello, everyone. Welcome to Wine, Women, and Words. I am Michelle, and with me, of course, is Diana.
Hello.
And we are, it's morning, like, look, morning. Weird. And we are doing a special brunch episode for our book of the month. And we have our amazing author, S.A. Chakraborty, but we're going to call her Shannon today.
Hi. I'll do the same wave.
I don't know. I feel like I'm channeling Pocahontas every time I start an episode.
Oh, why are you? Hold on. Let me remove my cat from the room.
Really? Animals, they make things so great.
She just, of course, ran under the table, so I can't get her. So that won't happen again.
That's okay. I've got my dog on my lap right now,
Okay.
so at some point she may just pop up during the show.
Yeah, we're a very like whatever happens kind of podcast where it's we embrace chaos.
Yes.
So
That's putting it nicely.
yeah, because I snuck downstairs. I was like, Landon, Daddy's hiding in the bed. Go get him. And then I shut the gate at the top of the stairs and ran down. And then I texted my husband. I said, you can stay up there if you want. Just turn on a TV. So this is our spotlight book of the month, which is the City of Brass. But we have come to know it as our new obsession.
Yes.
And it's been a while. I mean, we love every single book that we bring on the show. We obsess over it for the month. But it's been a while since we have read a trilogy that has not been fully published yet. And all of a sudden I got a text from Diana going, this is a trilogy and the second book isn't out yet.
But it's coming soon. It is coming soon. So
Is it January?
January.
Yeah.
A little too soon. I'm still doing copy edits.
That's
Well,
okay.
because-
I can wait till January. I can hold off till then.
Yeah, January isn't too far out. That's not bad. It's the worst feeling is when you're like halfway through a book and you realize that there will be a second one and you have to wait like a year or 2 years.
Yeah.
Or George R.R. Martin style, where it's been like how many years?
I don't even remember. A lot.
Yeah. Yeah,
But I think the last book that we were like this was the Discovery of Witches
Uh-huh.
trilogy, and we were like counting down for the third book to come out.
Mhm.
So that's where we are. That's the level that we're at with City of Brass.
I like that. I'm glad to hear.
So, and obviously we are we're not full blown alcoholics or anything. So we're not drinking wine this morning. We are drinking coffee. And this is like my perfect a meal without wine is called breakfast, but not that I don't drink wine all the time, guys. I don't want you guys to think that.
You guys could think that about me.
So we've become emotionally invested in these characters.
Wait, then have you both finished the book?
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
Were
Diana!
you emotionally invested in one particular character? I do apologize.
I am, and we will get into that discussion in a bit.
Okay.
Before we get too much into the discussion, I do have to do our disclaimer. For those of you who are watching and are listening, if you have not finished the book yet, proceed at your own risk. We will be discussing spoilers unapologetically, so do not send us an email when we discuss those spoilers. So this is your opportunity to just pause the show, finish the book, and then come back and listen.
And
Okay,
it's
Michelle,
like
you may proceed.
it's like 530 pages, so you can get through it in like an afternoon, like Diana did.
Okay, it wasn't an afternoon, it was a week, technically.
I know. I was getting text messages going, have you started reading it? Where are you at? What part are you at? Have you gotten to this part yet? I'm like, I promise I will start reading it soon.
At 7 a.m. text messages after she had started reading going, progress report, please. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I feel like I should add an additional disclaimer that I have not gotten a lot of sleep and I'm like deep in book 2 copy edits. So I'm going to try not to discuss spoilers, but there's like, I don't even really know where books 1 and book 2 ended in my head right now. So we will see what happens.
We're going to have so much fun with this, Michelle.
I know. There's potential to get insider information now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should have 8 a.m. episodes more often.
There you go.
Right? Or book authors in the middle of their copy edits.
Right? There's a strategy there that we have not explored.
Yes, I like this.
So the first question is, where did the idea for City of Brass come from?
So this was not supposed to be a book. This was something I just kind of started playing with when I was working after college. I had wanted to go back to graduate school for Middle East, not really Middle Eastern, but more broader Islamic history. I wanted to study the medieval period and trade in the Indian Ocean. Just the economic situation and life situation being when I graduated college, I started working and I ended up getting married and I had my daughter and I kind of wanted to do something with all the books I like to read about history. So I started this little weird world building project where I made up this world and like kind of envisioning some of these old societies back, but also I added magic because I'm a nerd.
Because why wouldn't you add magic?
Yeah, I mean, why not? So I started just kind of doing this little project. And like to the point where like after a while, my husband was like, "Why are you always on your computer typing?" I told him, and then it kind of, through the years, it was like I started adding a story to it, and characters and plot. And then, I had I met with a writing group and they helped me fix it up. And they were like, you should try to query for an agent. So I was like, I should try to query for an agent because why not? And now like 2 years later, I'm like, what just happened to my life? but in a good way. So a lot of this just started out just me kind of, seeing what I could do with some of the old history. And like, I liked a lot. I mostly focused on sort of late antiquity and the early medieval world, like the Abbasids in Iraq and the Fatimids in Cairo and the Indian Ocean world. So it's like, it was just kind of recreating some of these places and people and stories that don't always get told a lot. We kind of have some typical ideas. Whenever I tell people what I write about, they're like, oh yes, like the Greek sciences, they brought them back. And I'm always like, there's so much more than that. So that's kind of my thing.
And I love the book because in so many ways it feels like Arabian Nights meets Harry Potter. That's what it feels like. If I have to describe the book, that's where I go. It's Arabian Nights meets Harry Potter, which is just the best of both worlds, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I read a lot of the old folk tales, and they're fantastic. Like, they're better than what I could come up with in terms of adventure and monsters. Like, they'll come up, they'll be like, they don't even care about plot. They'll be like, a centaur is fighting a statue now, and that's what it is. So it's like I wanted to take some of that adventure and spirit, and all of those tales are also set in our world, and a lot of them go back to the ancient city of this, or they discover this. So I was like, okay, I would like to do some of that, but also add like, complicated plot narratives and round characters. So that was kind of what I was hoping to do.
Well, and I love it. So much of this is steeped in history and the actual mythology. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Did you do it talk about the research with these characters?
I mean, the research was stuff that I had just been reading for years, but a lot of it you kind of come up in the old tales. And not just the Arabian Nights. We have Tales of the Marvelous and News of the Strange. There's some of the old heroic tales, like we have like Antar and Dot al-Hima. So you have a lot of these kind of stories, and then just the mythology. I mean, it just comes out in the monsters and the villains and all the sorts of different kinds of spirits they have. So pretty much I'm trying to, everything in the story that I wrote existed, like I took it from something, except who's listening to your episodes is the Ishtas, which was the little creature that I wrote in the masjid who like would clean shoes and everything. And that I invented, and that was total wish fulfillment on my part, because it was a combination of like, I walk a lot and my shoes are destroyed and I can never find anybody who actually fixes them, and I have a cat who chews them. So I was like, wouldn't it be great? We have this period of time, we put our shoes away, you just put them away and somebody fixed them up. So, and I named it after my cat who chews shoes. So
I love it.
that was the only thing that was invented.
Like, I need one of those in my life.
I know, right? Like, I would totally, I'd be like, you get a bit of fruit if you would like clean up my whole life. Like,
I just go in my closet.
Yes. Yes. It's hard to find like shoe repair places nowadays.
It is. It really is. I think I know of like maybe one, and it went out of business.
Yeah.
My husband wears cowboy boots, and one day he was like, I need to get my boots rehealed. I'm like, that's a thing?
I know, it's hard. I mean, I don't have cowboy boots, but I've tried to get high heels rehealed. But...
He takes his cowboy boots very seriously.
I'm actually invested in on getting repaired. If you have a really good pair of boots that you spent good money on, like a good Steve Madden boots,
yeah.
If you mess up the heel, that's something I want to get fixed.
See, I knew people would understand.
We totally get it.
Yeah. Your audience gets it.
You go.
Okay, I was gonna say, so is that your favorite character or mythology character that you created, or is there another one that would be your favorite?
There's one I haven't. It's not really a mythological figure, but there's one I haven't gotten to fit in the story yet. Which is in a lot of the old folktales, both Arab, Persian, really even some of the old Indian and East African ones, statues are evil. I mean, like statues, they move either by witchcraft or by like old science methods, and they fight and they kill things, and it's fantastic. I love this because I feel like this came from people who lived among these more ancient ruins, and it's like, yes, if you saw like a messed up looking old Roman statue, I feel like a ghost story or something creepy is better than like the British were like, let's put it in the garden. I love this. They do these with these stories. I mean, people, in the characters in these stories go and they find like an ancient city and the statue like cuts them apart. And I have not gotten to include one of those yet. I had a scene and I had to cut it, but one day.
Oh, I look forward to that because I mean, one of my favorite monsters in Doctor Who are the Weeping Angels, which are based on the statues. Yes, and I'm like, one more thing to be terrified about statues.
Now when my kids go, oh, look, a statue, it's like, come on, kids, let's go.
Take it, let's go.
Yeah.
So, I'm so excited about our conversation. I've lost my thread on my questions, so hold, please.
Sure.
Now, and the world that you created, was it, one of the things that I said during the episodes was that we have to give you a list of words and have you pronounce them.
Okay.
In my mind, like I have been pronouncing it Daevabad, but I wasn't sure if that was right.
I say Daevabad.
Okay.
So just like day instead of like stretching it out, I guess.
Okay. All right. So I was close.
I pronounce words in books all the time. So I didn't know how to say Hermione the entire time I read Harry Potter.
Michelle and I are both Italian, from Italian ancestry, so we're pronouncing every single vowel that you come across in a word. So,
and was that world created or based on myth or mythology, or was that completely out of your brain?
Daevabad was mostly out of my brain, but just sort of the concept. I mean, when I was kind of playing with this at the point where it was like a world building exercise, I had rules for myself, which was that I couldn't sort of contradict what had already been written. So if we said something, they'd be like, in a lot of the texts you learn, Suleiman, they say he cursed and punished the Jinn. And it doesn't really go further than that. And I could take that and be like, well, how? And then what happened after? And then, like make up that whole like aftermath. Or there's some brief stories about that the Jinn live in this unseen world and it's surrounded by green mountains. So I was like, okay, they live in an unseen world surrounded by green mountains. And there's an evil lake and this city that I filled with a lot of architecture from sort of all the centuries that I was like, if you were a creature who lived for centuries and traveled invisibly in the human world, you might take from what they use. So 1,000 years ago, they might have had this sort of building. 2,000 years ago, they would have had this. So it would be kind of created and pulled from that, but that was kind of my own invention.
I think I'm kind of a fantasy writer. Like I'm trying, plugging away. And it always blows my mind when I read something that is so visual. And it gets to the point where like I was standing in my Zumba class waiting for it to start and preparing for the entire lack of rhythm that I have. And I was in my mind, I was just thinking, and I said, and I found myself going, oh, I can't wait to go back and finish watching the series. And I'm thinking in my mind of, flying carpets and like Middle Eastern settings. And I'm like, what show am I watching that has that? And then I realized that it was the book. I was like homesick for the book. So, which is a really good sign that I'm like super into it. But I'm always in awe of authors that can create a world so visual like that. And it's mind blown.
Well, thank you. Well, I feel like, that's a thing, when you're writing, you kind of endeavor to do. It's not just, you walk down the street and it's like, you're not just, okay, I saw the blue car going down. What does it smell like? Is it hot? How do you feel walking on the street? What are the passerbys doing? So it's kind of like putting yourself in a scene in all sorts of atmospheric ways, I guess. Because I was like, I don't think, many people have been to my made up magical city. So we better make it clear what it's like to walk down the street.
Good, valid point. And I hear voices coming down the stairs, so it might get interesting right now.
That's understandable.
And I'm the historical fiction author, and I'm just so thrilled about the whole, using the actual mythology and stuff. Because in a lot of ways, that feels like that's history, and you're pulling people's stories from that culture. Did you feel kind of, how should I put it, like you had a responsibility to get it right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that was actually another reason I wanted to set it in our world, because sometimes you see fantasy settings in their secondary world and they're obviously inspired by something in this world, a lot of times where the author's not from there. And it doesn't seem always right the way they either like, it'll be done poorly and then they're like, oh, it was just an invention. I pretended it all away. But it's not. It's based on something real. And while I'm Muslim myself, and a lot of writing this was kind of working out some of this like rap and some of these shared stories. I'm not from the Middle East. I'm not Arab. I'm not Persian. And I really felt, I was like, no, like if I'm writing this, I have to get it right. I have to give it to friends who understand that. And I feel like with historical fiction, there's also an understanding of what stories are yours to tell and which are probably not. I kind of stick with the past because that's what I know, and I look for stories that are more universal. But I wouldn't really tell, sometimes I talk to people like, I'm Muslim, but I'm white and a convert. It wouldn't be my story to be like, let's talk about like internment camps in the United States. The colonial aspects of history. It's not really my place. There are better people who can adjust that and talk to that. And I think a lot of it is just interrogating what you're doing at every level and sharing it with people from that community, especially if you're kind of a part of that community in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love it.
So, and now we're going to kind of like dive in. So far, we haven't done any spoilers, and I feel like we've been really good about that.
Everybody dies. No, that's not what happens.
Oh,
there's this big tiger that just jumps out at the end.
No, it's not. It's not Nani. It's not Nani. See.
Oh, hi.
It's a twist time.
Yeah.
That's an awesome car.
Here, go show Daddy. Sorry. So let's kind of dive into Naari, because she's everything we love about a lead character, especially a lead female character. So when you started working on her, was she already based in a character in your mind, or did she just say like, this is who I am?
A little bit of both. With Naari, I really wanted to take, we have in fantasy so many times the orphan who's lost in a part of the world where they don't have any friends or any family. And with Naari, I really wanted to try the way that like that would profoundly impact the way somebody was raised and brought up and think. I mean, if you're raised without a family and everyone around you is suspicious, you're going to have a different way in which you deal with people, in which you see the world. So I really wanted to write somebody who would survive that and would realistically, that would impact how she met people, how she dealt with people, and how she saw the world in a way that doesn't change when then that fantasy orphan is brought to the royal court. Those things that you learn in childhood and as a young adult, those lessons and how to negotiate the world don't leave.
I absolutely loved how headstrong she was and how much of a troublemaker she was. And the underlying, there's a point where she's looking at one of the characters and she's like, "You're my next Mark." And this is going to be good. I absolutely love that. I was just like, oh my gosh, I love her. So yeah, I thought she did a really great job with her.
Thanks.
And now I believe it's time we move on to our book boyfriends. And yeah, I am definitely Team Dara, and I didn't think I would end up Team Ali. I was hoping she'd end up Team Dara. I thought for a moment she would be Team Dara, but she went totally Team Ali because she's got a thing for the nice guys.
I'm not Team Dara. All right. I lean slightly more Ali. Although I know that we kind of, or you and Diana kind of talked about my theory because I have suspicions.
I have to hear this theory in full.
So, okay. Well, I might as well talk about that now.
Yeah.
So, spoiler alert to everyone. So, at the end, there's chaos. It's, like, I'm reading it, and my daughter is sitting next to me as she is right now. So, I'm reading it, and then that scene happens where Dara shows up, and he goes all crazy and shoots Ollie in the throat. And I say, "Oh, SHIT," because it happens. And Lily's like, "What happened, Mommy?"
Oh no.
Like, nothing. Don't worry about it. So then afterwards, like, he comes back but he sweats, which Jinn do not do. And then he brings down the building because he gets upset that his dad and his brother are saying that they're going to go after Naari now. And he's all crazy. So I am not convinced that he is alive. I am convinced that he is actually like dead and animated by some kind of outside force that he doesn't realize, and he thinks that he's okay, but he's really not. So that is why I maintain that he died.
That is a theory. That I can hold my lip on, I won't say.
And what was funny was when I asked her for the clarification that she wanted on that question, she was like, I was like, which two characters died? Because we can only think of one. And she's like, Ali. I was like, no, Ali's alive. And she was like, no, excuse me. And so as I'm trying to type this email answering your questions about the show, she's just going off. And I couldn't help myself. I kept poking the bear just because it was when she gets on a theory and you start to try to disprove her on a theory, she gets worse and it's hilarious. She was
but I like hearing fan theories. It's fun. I've spent so many years, doing the same thing to other shows and books I love. It like cracks me up to see people doing the same thing.
So I mean, I guess like yes, okay, only Dara died, which
spoilers.
Well, okay, we said spoiler at the very beginning.
Yes, like 3 times, and in the show notes we're going to have spoiler alerts.
Yes.
So if people are still listening right now and they haven't read the book, it's their own damn fault.
Yes.
But I mean, and I love that the whole book. So the first half of the book felt like kind of like an adventure thriller where it was them getting to Daevabad.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they're there, it felt like almost like a political thriller because it was all, like the politics and the court intrigue and dealing with everyone. And then at the end, it's like plot twist, plot twist, plot twist. And did you kind of map that out intentionally, or was that just kind of how the story developed?
I kind of wanted with this story and with the second one as well to kind of create the feeling that someone had stepped into a net without realizing it, and a net kind of slowly comes up around you. To the point by the end of your book, you're like, oh, I see how all these things connected, and now I'm stuck. So.
Yeah, I can see that. I definitely fell into it where I was like, holy crap. And, and I love, especially looking back, where you ease us into the politics of it by giving us Ali's point of view. I thought that was really great and interesting because we got Ali's point of view and we got Naari's point of view, but we didn't get Dara's point of view.
No.
So we saw Dara through everybody else's eyes, which is interesting, and especially with everything that happens to Dara.
So, and now I'm actually curious about, you know, all of the mythological creatures or monsters and figures. They're all based in Middle Eastern mythology. Are the I forget what they're called, the objects that they have with like bits of themselves that they keep that allows the jinn to come back to their bodies?
Oh, the relics?
Yes, thank you. I couldn't remember the word.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to think. No, I kind of came up with that. But even on the Middle Eastern part, like I think it kind of, that's the element that comes out a lot, but it really was meant to bring in more like, you know, South Asian and East African and North African and kind of some other elements as well. You know, czars themselves are not really Middle Eastern. They have in East Africa and North Africa, but the relics, I came up with independently, and I'm trying to think if in my head it was because there was something I read about it, and I don't think so. But,
It seemed familiar. The relics seemed familiar to me. And
right? I mean, this might just be like a concept that kind of pervades cultures, this idea of relics. I mean, my family is Italian Catholic. They've got relics. Maybe I had some in the back part of my head, but...
So
I think it feels familiar because it ties so well into the whole Jinn mythology because they're tied to these pieces.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I was like, oh, and for me, as I was reading, I was like, oh, that explains a lot.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of different cultures and stuff that have used relics of people in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Well, since we're talking about theories, Diana, do you want to talk about your theory for the end, or do we want to save that?
Oh yes, my theory. I had to think, which theory are we discussing? Because I have a lot of theories. Okay, not just about this book, but in general. So my theory is that I forget Naari's mother's name. It's
Manyza.
Manyza. Okay, so as we see it, Manyza and her brother are killed, and Naari is apparently Manyza's daughter. You know, according to how all the evidence is presented in the book. And then there's this one point in the book where Dara talks about his memory of being there when they were killed, and he's walking around with no memory because that's like the last thing he remembers. Yeah. He doesn't remember beyond that. So my theory is that Gisham was trying to kill her mother, Naari's mother, and she was onto it, and so they cast a spell to hide themselves, to make everybody think that they were dead. But they're not really dead. They actually, they came back as other people, as Naari. The mother is Naari, and then the brother is Jamshid. Is it Jamshid?
Jamshid, yeah.
Jamshid. That's her brother. And Dari and the mother's name, who for some reason I want to call her something else, and I'm screwing it up, so we're just going to go Naari's mother. Dari and Naari's mother, they were actually a thing, and they've met each other again now that she's Naari. That's my theory.
I have also seen that theory online. I will say the second book will make quite clear.
So now I've got a question about fan theories. Now that you're writing the second and you're looking towards the third book, do fan theories play a role in some of your planning? Just out of
Yeah, no, it's funny because when I first started this, like, I was like, I liked to read reviews and I was like, oh, people like the book or they don't like the book. And now I'm a people pleaser and now I don't read anything because I read things and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. You seem like a really nice person and you really liked my book, but I'm going to destroy every hope you just wrote. So Just because, you know, and it's funny, I talked to a lot of like more, I guess, veteran writers who had this under their belt, and they always said the same thing. They were like, stop reading reviews because it's gonna, even like the good ones, you know, they get in your head and you kind of want to sometimes write to the audience. But you know, you have to stay true to the story. And especially like, at least from what I can tell, my audience is like bitterly divided on many things. I'm like, okay, the best way to sort of walk the middle path is to kind of just be like, I'm writing this into the void, and after book 3 is published, I will see what people think. So.
There's bitterly divided, like Team Ali versus Team Dara. You know, Team Dara is better.
I don't like to think of them as teams. I like to, you know, when I was kind of conceiving them, in many ways, I felt like Ali and Naari almost had a little bit more common in that they were younger and that they hadn't really been faced with some of the choices and the orders that Dara had in life. Mm-hmm. And what I kind of wanted to explore was, would they make some of those same choices?
Michelle, you pretty much said the same thing about them.
I have it written down right here. During our constant texting and analyzing the characters, we decided they're both two sides to the same coin. Ali is just as passionate about his people and his history, but he's young and hasn't experienced anything Dara has. While Dara is hardened by his past, but remembers what it was like to be that idealistic.
Yeah, that was a lot what I was going. We wrote down. That was a lot what I was going for, because I really wanted to. In fantasy, we have this character so many times, the broody warrior who's done terrible things in their past, and I wanted to dig into that a bit more, similar to sort of the trope that surrounds Naari, and just really be like, how does somebody who is otherwise seems like a good person, a nice person, how do they do evil things? And I think, again, spoilers, you find out, and it's kind of, you know, Dara doesn't really want Naari to find out. His past is a lot darker than he had her to reveal. And in the end of the book, he also does something which I kind of think is unforgivable. But I wanted to explore how someone might make those decisions, even if the audience is just like, no, that's wrong. I think you're wrong. I think that's evil in a way, but I don't know what to do because I still like you as a character, and how it plays into the fact that a lot of the evil done in this world is not done by people who they're the bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. It definitely has that soldier mentality, because these are the orders that I had to do. And I loved his relationship with Naari. And I think Michelle even enjoyed that. And this is something that we discussed. In a lot of the fantasy books, you have this two alphas that you put together. You got the alpha female and the alpha male. And 9 times out of 10, the alpha male wins out, or they get so overpowering. I think my only criticism of Discovery of Witches was by book 3, the love interest was just so domineering and so alpha that it put the character in the flux, and I stopped liking him by the end of the 3rd book. But I really like the relationship that you've set up with these two, because she is so sarcastic, and the more he tries to dig in and tries to order her around, the more stubborn she gets. And the more sarcastic she gets in return, and she gets these emotions, and it feels like sometimes he's done a few things by the end of the book, like he's trying to be the suave, I'm the man who's going to save you, and I'm going to do what's best for you without consulting you. Yeah. And she just turns around to hurt him, I think in some ways just to hurt him, because she's so angry that he does this. And I feel like that's a much more realistic and a much more, I think in a lot of ways, a healthier way to look at some relationships, where you don't have two people, one person overpowering the other person. And also the fact that, you know, when it also shows what happens when somebody tries to do something to another person or for another person without taking their feelings into consideration. What were some of the things that kind of went into your mind in creating that relationship?
Well, that was something I really wanted to explore, because it's like a lot of times we have these characters where it's like the guardian comes in. It's always a young woman. Oh, she doesn't know anything. But what does it happen when, no, maybe that guardian is wrong, and goes into a situation where what they're doing is not correct. But I wanted to, like, again, have something complicated, that it was like, she can see he's not correct. And it's kind of like when you care about someone, when they're going down the wrong path, you kind of, you don't want to abandon them. You want to see if you can bring them back in, if you can fix them. But how do you do that and also stand up for yourself? I feel like, and when I wrote the end of the book, I was trying to make very clear that, Naari's choice is a sound one. She's kind of taking stock of her situation in Daevabad, and she is like, how can I make a life here that's good for myself, that's good for my people? And she makes a choice. And I think it's a pragmatic one for her. It's not perhaps the most romantic or the happiest, but she's a survivor, and she will survive something like that. And, this is, again, a huge spoiler. What happens when the person you'd most trusted and cared for is just like, that's not going to happen, and takes that choice away from you? At what point does that affect, can you forgive someone like that? Can you move past someone? Should you? Is there a way to still help that person because you care for them? So I really wanted to dig into, people take women's choices away in this world all the time. And that doesn't make them the hero.
Absolutely love that. And yeah, it's the feminism that's like underlying feminism of the story that I was like, ooh, I love this even more. So Michelle, did you want to talk about the relationship between Mandir and Jamshid?
I love those characters. Those are probably Jamshid was like probably the most underrated character. Like, he kind of flew under the radar a little bit. Like, he was there, and at first I kind of thought like he would be one of the characters that just came in and out of the book to serve a purpose, but it would be a very short-lived purpose. And then, spoiler. So my two oldest friends, I've known them since preschool. Their mom is Persian, and she always calls them June, like after Layla June and Sada June. So during the scene where Jamshid comes up to the roof when someone tries to kill him, and he says he calls Muntadir June, I was like, oh my God. I love the relationship, and I love the complexities in it, because I am assuming it would not go over well if anyone knew about it. So how did that relationship develop?
That relationship developed pretty early, because it was just kind of seemed natural. I was like, like they were just such good friends, and it was like, they had, in the world of the story, especially you find out in the second book, that is brought a lot more to the forefront. It's that, they've been, Ollie's young, so like we're seeing it through his eyes, and he's doesn't notice anything. But like these two men have been friends. They've been together for over a decade, and I kind of liked exploring that, of not just something that's maybe new, but sort of this old comfort people have with each other. And this is again like more of a second book thing, but how differences in the second book starts and things are a lot more tense between their groups of people. It's kind of like, how does that tear you apart when you're sort of you're friends, or you're a couple, and your peoples kind of turn on each other? And I like the idea, this was why I wanted to stick with it, is that you get to the last half of the book and everyone's like, oh, Ghassan wants to marry Muntadir and Naari. Everyone's talking about bringing, the Al-Qatanis and the Nahids together. And it's like, oh, wait, that's already happened. Like, nobody just knows. Nobody knows. So.
Yeah, it was so funny because I didn't catch on to the relationship, like that part, like the relationship. I just figured, okay, they're just really good friends, they're best friends. And then at the end, I was like, oh. And then Michelle, when she texted me that, I was like, oh my God, I completely missed that. That's such a good observation. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't catch that. This is why we have to read books together, because we catch the things that the other one misses.
Yeah, that was even writing that, I was like, because we see it all through Ollie's eyes, and like he doesn't notice anything about anything. So there's that. But it was also, and when I was writing it, I was like, I feel like your best friend wouldn't deal with your irritating younger brother, whereas like your boyfriend might. Is like, all right, fine. I'll socialize with him for you. Like.
And so there's so many levels, and I can't wait to see how the second book unfolds it, because I didn't even make that connection that Naari and Luntendir's marriage would unite the two people, but that has already happened because of Jamshid.
And they actually like each other.
Right? And they like each other, which is a huge plus. But then you find out, spoiler, that he doesn't even know who he really is. So that's like an extra level of uniting and then drama, because I'm assuming he finds out eventually.
Maybe.
So I really liked that relationship. And so fantasy casting is a huge part of Wine, Women, and Words. And we have been like going back and forth about who should play who. Do you have any fantasy casting picks for your characters?
So I'm terrible at this. People always ask me this, and I feel like, especially for Ali and Naari, they're meant to read as younger. Ali's 18 and Nahri's 20, and I don't know any young actors or actresses. I kind of feel like, I'm a Game of Thrones fan, and when my husband and I were watching it, we often would think that the actor who played Grey Worm would be good for Ali, because he's like also has a similar, like this tall, lanky dude who's severely has like some severe personality issues, and like just the way that actor kind of carries himself. I was like, yeah, I could see that. And my agent likes Jason Momoa for Dara. My editor firmly disagrees.
I don't know why we didn't think of that.
I mean, if it were ever made into TV and film, like I would strongly prefer, the actors to be played by people from those places. Also thought maybe Ranveer Singh for Dara, but I don't know. I'm bad at fantasy casting.
My fantasy cast, Raul, I want to say last name is Kali. He was yeah. He played the doctor in iZombie.
Yes. I feel like he's too nice.
But if you follow him on Instagram, he's not. He's
not nicer.
He's very much he's into MMA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he curses up a storm. He's he's far more bad boy in real life than he is on that show. It's like the complete opposite of that character on the show. And so that's why I was like, okay, I think he would be really good in this role as Dara. But yeah, I think there's such an untapped market when it comes to a lot of the Middle Eastern and Indian actors that would be so good. I mean, there was a lot of our friend Eddie, when she was on the show, she gave us some names of some actresses that would be great. Yeah, I think we're starting to become, I love the fact that we're starting to become a more diverse world in our media, in both our books and our television shows. And diversity is just such a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it even, it's not, when sometimes these conversations it's more just reality. It's kind of like adjusting and giving opportunities more towards, just not, no, the world is becoming more diverse. It's just like, we've just been smashing everybody who's, not this white cis ideal. So it's kind of, those voices and those people are out there. It's making sure that they have the same platform, that they can kind of be everybody can kind of compete more, and we can get more resources and support to people who haven't had those opportunities.
Absolutely, and there's so many stories out there in people of color whose stories haven't that I'm finding that I'm absolutely loving. After this, I went on to reading America for Beginners. And,
I just got a copy of that.
It's
by who's the author again?
Leah.
Leah, something.
Yeah.
Yes. Somebody gave me a copy of that.
Yeah, absolutely loved it, and it felt so well with the Indian culture and the immigrant Indian culture on top of which you have back in India, and it was just such a good book in general. And so I'm finding myself, especially with historical fiction, where we have this really strong stuff that's just all about English Regency. And everything is set in England. And I used to love the Tudor stories, but now I can't even myself to crack open a book about anything with the tutors. And so we kind of, there's this rut, and I'm like so excited to see more stories come through that are about people of color and historical people, people of color in general. And so, and even fantasy, having the fantasy with people of color, those are the ones that are really, pulling my attention in. Besides City of Red Deer, which my book is almost up, because this was a pool reading book. I did read it in the pool, and it did get some damage, but it means that it's loved. But like one of my other big fantasy series that I love is the Mercy Thompson.
Okay.
Series. And it's very inclusive, especially with the LGBT community, and then also the Native American community. Mm-hmm. Native American characters play a huge role in that story. But I love the fact that this is, books like this are coming out more.
Yes, it's great. And there are some really fantastic ones coming out. The good thing about, that I put out a book like this is now people send me books to blurb, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's books like that coming out. Like, people are like, you wrote this, I think you'll like that. And I'm like, you're right, I will. Like,
So now the publication date for your second book is in January, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that means that you have to come back once we read the second one. Because
I hope you like the second one. What if I kill all your favorite characters?
Let's just face it, we're gonna like the second one.
Okay.
Yeah, even if you kill off all the characters, we're gonna be like, oh my god, you pulled a George R. R. Martin. But then there's others that we're gonna end up loving because we know there's going to be a third book.
Yes, there's going to be a third book. And I don't really kill off that many characters.
Well, and
there's a lot of mercy in there. I feel like, I feel like a good section of my bitterly divided fans are going to be very happy by the beginning of the second book. So I will give you that.
Well, and I feel like there's a certain degree, a certain level of not integrity, but I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but the ability to follow the story where it needs to go, even if it requires killing off a favorite character, like you can't just, I once upon a time read all the 3 Twilight books, Don't Judge. And
actually there's 4 Twilight books on.
And the thing that really bothered me about the third one was that, the third book was all about building up to this great war, and there was going to be a great battle, and people were gonna die, and then at the end it was just like, oh, just kidding, it was a huge mistake, we get it now, and everyone walked away. And I think it did an injustice, in my opinion, to the story. Mm-hmm. So I think authors who know that even though we love characters, even though I love Ali, I am still convinced that he is a body snatcher.
He's a body snatcher.
And okay. I accept this. I will love him even if he is possessed by some evil water demon. Which I maintain, because why would he have been able to beat Dara when he wasn't able to do it the first time around when they were sparring?
That is suspicious.
Right?
That is possible.
And by the way, I loved that scene of them sparring. That was
the sparring scene? Yeah. I that was one of my favorite scenes to write, because it was like, I like to put, at least I hope so, by the time you get to that point, you're like, these two do not get along. Like, this is not going to go well, and now there are weapons involved. So, and no one, it's kind of like, you see, Ali and Dara both have their flaws, and the people around them know that and are kind of good at pulling them back before those flaws come out. So it was like, with the sparring scene, I really just want to be like, there's nobody here to stop them.
Right? Like when it started, I think I texted Diana, I was like, oh my God, they're about to fight. This is not going to end well.
And I just laughed. I was like, yeah, you're right.
But I liked writing it too, because that was kind of what we said before about them, Dara had been a lot like Ali when he was younger. And I did kind of want to highlight, like, there was that difference that, it's not like when that sparring scene ends, it's not like Dara's just like, I think it's a troubling realization. Like, this was very much what I was like as a young person. And it's something that kind of saddens him in many ways.
Yeah, because, that's that's kind of, he remembers what it was like. He says, you know, you're young and you're in the ruling party, or you're in the ruling family, and I remember, or like, enjoy it because it never lasts, or whatever he says. So even though he's done all these awful things, he can still remember what it was like to be in Ollie's shoes.
Yeah. And I think Dara is starting to have a reckoning in a bit of that book of like, oh, right, maybe all those things I thought and believed and did terrible things for might not have been great. So.
Yeah, we get to see his journey too, and that's something, you know, we touched on a little bit early in the show, that, you know, we see him coming to that point, and his own character journey. So I'm excited to see his character journey in the second book, which, going back to getting you back on the show in the second book, so since it comes out in January, we're going to have to make this a book of the month. So I'm thinking March?
Yeah, it kind of comes out in late Januay anyway, so.
Yeah.
Do you like how we're doing this on recording, so we have like a historic
Yeah, and after that,
actual record?
Yes. Be like, we already booked her, so put this on the calendar. Yeah, so I'm thinking March would be good, because we already have a guest lined up for February. We line up our book of the month kind of early. They fill up kind of fast. So I'm thinking March would be good. We have April.
Yeah, either one.
Yeah, well, I think we've got
a year out in advance.
Well, we're texting back and forth while we're reading this, and we're like, okay, we have to nail this interview. Like, she has to have a good time.
I'm having a very good time. This is easy than a lot of my other ones. They're like, let's have a detailed list of like your historical sources, and I'll just be like, it's like 9:00 in the morning. I don't remember. I studied this for 15 years. I don't know.
Well, we do like to keep it classy here at Wine, Women, and Words. And like I said, before you came on, we are laid back. Whether it's coffee or wine, we're just like, hey, we enjoy books. We like to have fun with books, and we think that people reading should be able to enjoy them again, and bringing back a community. That's one of the things I loved about the emerging podcast world, is that there's more literary podcasts are popping up, and they're talking about books now. Because before, you didn't really talk about books, unless you found that one person down the aisle of the call center that you worked with. It was like books here. Let's just like go talk and like trade books with each other. You didn't really have that community. Sometimes you have the book clubs, and it was a 50-50 shot as to whether or not the book club actually read the book.
Yes. And if it was a book you would like, or kind of, even find something. I'm still yet to find a book club that like reads science fiction and fantasy or something like that.
Well, you got Wine, Women, and Words, because we periodically like fantasy. I think we had one sci-fi author on this month. We had Eddie Louise.
Okay.
Her transmigrations book, and I think we had like 2 or 3 others coming up this year.
Oh, cool.
So.
I think so. They all run together until I actually know what I'm reading this month. I'll text them and go, "What are we reading next month?" I forget. I have it. It's in the calendar, but
yeah, we had to keep it
mom brain, like. So totally forgot. I have a tiny human next to me putting puzzles.
I understand.
There are many times that I start a sentence, and then by the time I get to the middle of it, I forget how it's going to end. So, but speaking of ending, ooh, look at this segue.
Yes, there you go.
That wasn't even planned. So, how the whole trilogy, how the whole story is going to end, or is it still kind of a mystery to you also?
No, I pretty much know how it's going to end. I have the last few scenes and chapters in my head, and I think I'm going to be able to get to them, and I like them a lot, so we'll see.
Now, you like them a lot. Are they going to make us Kathy readers? Or are we going to show up at with pitchforks?
I hope not. I think I'm going for a satisfying and realistic end, but also one that maybe there's some sadness, but there's also shows a way of hope. I don't really want to be one of those writers who's like, everything is bleak and awful. Like, we live in some bleak times. Like, to kind of think of ways like we can, in our stories, kind of show people persevering and moving on and maybe making something new.
I think that's fair. It's vague enough to not give anything away.
Yeah.
Because you can take that one of many ways.
Yes.
In detail enough where I'm like, ooh, I want to see how it ends.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time on a Saturday, and thank your husband and daughter for giving up their house for an hour.
They're fine. They went to the library. They're good.
You might get that next week.
Thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
I'm so glad, and we look forward to having you on after the second book because we're already locking you in for that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. We love the book.
Of course.
Thank you. A whole hour before. Whoa.
Oh.
So chaos is about to explode here.
I understand.
Boring. But thank you so much, and I hope you had a good time. And
Bye.
And thanks everyone for listening. Come back next week. We will announce our, what are we, August book of the month?
Yes, go ahead and sign up for our newsletter. And in our newsletter, we'll have our August book of the month and details on when we're going to have a giveaway for that one.
Yay! All right, have a good day, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.